And welcome to UVU. We got a big group of people here. You want to say how much you like the film? Hubbel, thanks for representing the team. I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you some questions and then they're going to there's a line forming right now. People want to come and ask you and I don't know what they're going to ask and we'll just fire away. I want to start with just asking about you and Chris. And I'm always curious about writing partners and their procedure and how they work together and how it works. And can you just kind of introduce that to us and how long you've been working together?
Chris and I have known each other since college, uh, late 90s, early 2000s. And but we didn't really work together in school. Just one second. But when I after I graduated from graduate school, I had this script that I was really excited to make, and I was looking for the perfect director. And Chris, for some reason, Chris's name just popped into my mind. This is someone I knew a little bit and had seen his movies, but I wouldn't call a close friend, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah.
And so I contacted him and we met, and it just turned out that we had a really similar sensibility, you know. Like the thing I like to say about writing partnerships is you don't have to have 100% overlap. Maybe that's even too much, you know.
Yeah.
If you have about 80% overlap when it comes to your taste, that's pretty good. Any less than that, you might disagree about too much stuff creatively, you
Hmm.
know. So we started working together, you know, he directed the film that I wrote and acted in called American Fork. And then while we were on the festival circuit, you know, we went to maybe a dozen festivals around the world with that movie. And we just got to talking about what we wanted to do next. And um, you know, we had these separate ideas, and then we just started to talk about, well, what could we do together, you know, if we wanted to work together again. And at a certain point, we sort of formalized the partnership, and it's been a creative marriage ever since.
And do you guys only work together now, or do you also do separate things?
Only together. We had you know, a phase where we figured out early on. I think that we both had opportunities to work separately, and I guess neither of us liked the way that felt. So we just like, all right, if we're gonna take on a project, we're gonna do it together, even if it's a small indie movie that someone brings us in to write on, or a studio project.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to these guys and thank you so much. And we've got you we're okay for like until we're good, or do you have to be out at a certain time? How are you? Yeah.
I told my class I'd come back at 9:30.
Okay, guys, we got about half an hour, a little more. Thank you.
Hey,
Hi.
I'm Zach. I'm a director. I just want to ask you, just very broadly, what it's like writing within IP, because I know that's very in right now.
Yeah, almost everything that we have worked on has been some sort of IP, whether it's so my writing partner and I have done maybe, I don't know, 12 projects at studio level, you know. Not all of them have been made, only I guess three at this point. And every one of them has been either a remake or based on a true story or based on a book, you know, or obviously a video game in this case. And it's almost like I don't know any other way to do it now. You know, something comes in and you figure out a way to tell the best story about it. You know, like if it's a video game, a lot of those don't. There are a lot of video games that are really story heavy, you know, but Minecraft wasn't very story heavy, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's such an open world game, you know, you can kind of play Minecraft any way you want to. By contrast, I was observing my son play a game over his shoulder last night that was like, you know, very focused and directed. Something like The Last of Us, you know, that's very linear, you know. It almost tells you how to adapt it. But Yeah, I'd say the key is just figuring out the movie version of it no matter what it is. I mean, a lot of times we'll get a book that comes in, and even if it's a popular book, it'll just not feel like it's movie ready yet, you know?
Mhm.
Like, oh, no one would pay to see this, you know?
Mhm.
And our job is to figure out how to make it something that people would go pay to see, you know?
That makes sense. Thank you.
You bet.
Hi, I'm Pete. I'm a director here at UVU. Um, Real quick, do you teach Bradley at the U?
Yeah, Bradley Andersen.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's great.
yeah, he's awesome. I just, I just, I just had a quick question for you. So, when you go through a writer's block, what do you usually do to get through that? Do you go back and revisit films that you love, or like things that inspire you, or what kind of things do you do? Like, what's your process?
How would you define writer's block?
Where you're in a point where you don't know what you want your characters to do next, or you don't know how you want the story to go forward from where you are, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we we just don't believe in writer's block, my writing partner and I. And I think it does help to have a writing partner as far as getting through writer's block. But uh, what we do is we give ourselves plenty of time on the front end to outline the story, you know, so that we never have a moment where we get sort of caught in the middle of the story and it's like, well, what do they do now? We know what they do now. We've already laid out a map of everything the character is going to do. So I think it involves a lot of planning and discussion up front. And then the second thing is I'm never not going to write. You know, I'm never going to sit there and just like rack my head and be like, I can't think of anything to say. What does my character do right now? You know, I'm going to write the bad version of that scene, you know? And I feel like if you let yourself, there's a quote that I found earlier today on this topic by Roger Ebert where he said, this is a paraphrase because I can't get the quote exactly right, but like um, the muse doesn't come to you until you're in the process of creating, you know. And by the muse, I mean that thing that inspires creativity, right? So you've got to start, you know, let your fingers and your brain do some hard work. And then at a certain point, it'll almost turn over like an engine. And you find that, oh, okay, oh, you know, all of a sudden this rush of ideas comes and you can figure out what to do next. You know, so I'd say just start writing, write the bad version of something, and eventually the good stuff will start to come out.
Thank you.
You bet.
Hello, my name is Christina and I'm a director here. And I was wondering, how do you approach a film that has characters made of different media? Does that make it more freeing or more challenging?
What do you mean characters made of different media?
You've got like actors on set with the green screen and whatnot, and then you have the animated characters.
Animated characters like the nitwit character and the other. I mean, I guess there are lots of animated characters in that movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, what I tell my students is, you know, you write that character as if it's a real person, no matter, you know, no matter what kind of mythical creature it is. I think that there's uh I remember watching like oh, never mind. I, I just think the key is to approach every character as if they were a three-dimensional person, even if they're you know, a monster or a mythical creature, or if they are you know, every character has hopes and dreams no matter whether they're animated or not. You know, I mean, some of the movies that we connect with the most are animated movies. You know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, sewed up overall. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Dex. I'm in the cinematography track. as a writer, what are your thoughts on the audience reaction to Jack Black's lines in the film?
Great question. You know, when the trailer came out, we worried a little bit because it got a lot of criticism, you know. I think it was you know, anytime when you're making something that's based on something that people love, they're going to have strong opinions about it, you know. And and we panicked a little, and I think everyone involved was like, you know, is this being marketed right? Like, was this the right trailer for the movie and stuff like that? But then it sort of morphed into this, for some people, almost an ironic appreciation of the lines, you know, and you started to see memes pop up where people were, it's almost like they were embracing the way he said things in the movie. And I think it ended up almost like if the movie had been released like 2 months after that first trailer came out, it may not have done as well. But because it became almost like something people wanted to see as like an event, I think that actually helped the movie. You know, when you're anticipating the release of a movie, you get this data from the studio called tracking, you know, and the movie wasn't tracking really well in the weeks leading up to it. We were in the weeks leading up to its release, we were getting kind of concerned, like, oh, you know, like, do we have to sort of brace ourselves for something that underperforms? You know, I think the predictions were something like it would do like $60 million its opening weekend, which for a movie this size, that's just not good enough, you know. But it ended up making something like 160 million its opening weekend. It made more than Barbie did in its opening weekend. And um, and I think it's still the number one opening weekend of the year. And I think that just comes down to timing. And I'm grateful that whatever way people wanted to enjoy the movie and come out and see it, I'm grateful that they did. I mean, the audiences that I saw it with, you had both sort of the teenagers and college students who were sort of like ironically watching the movie, but you also had kids who were like, this is the best movie I've ever seen, you know. And so any way someone wants to come out and see the movie, I'll take it, you know.
Thank you. I respect that.
Hi, I'm Ashley. My question for you is, what techniques have helped you kind of find your own voice as a writer?
That's a very good question. One of the things that I do is I assign my students this as a character assignment sometimes, is that I'll do a journal entry as the character, you know, as the lead character. That way I can kind of get into the thoughts that don't necessarily come across on the page and on the screen, you know, like, and another thing I'll do is um, I want to know the backstory of every character in the movie, whether that backstory factors into the plot or not. So I'm really into making sure everything is character focused um, and that just it's almost like what you want the audience to feel is that if the camera were to turn in a different direction than the direction that it's pointing, the world would still be there, you know. It's almost like the world that you're creating is a 360 world, you know. So I try and think about that every time I'm creating something new.
Thank you.
That
So I'm Luis, and I'm the cine track, and I'm a senior.
you're on what
Mhm.
track?
The cinematography track.
Oh, cool.
Well, and my question is also from the first question I was asked is, since this is such a like a famous game, did you feel like pressured to like write like the best script, or like, well, how many variations were there before you got to that final script that was released and was made? Was
That's
a
a good.
process.
Um, right when the video game became popular, I don't know, was that like 2010, 2012? I can't remember. But as soon as something becomes that popular, people figure out, okay, how can we make this into a movie? You know? And so, um, and so right away they were hiring, names you would recognize from not just names that are sort of famous among writers, but names you would recognize like to work on the script. And what happens in the studio system is, someone gets hired to write something and, people sort of gauge how they feel about it. And if they don't like it enough, they move on to another writer. So there were probably, I don't know, 15 different writers that worked on this before we started working on it in 2021. And by the time we got to it, it's almost like they had tried so many things. I think a lot of people were feeling like, you know, we don't know where to turn, we don't know what to do now. And I want you to say your question one more time. What was your question?
My question was there what was the process of it getting the script to how it is now, that like the finalized script, because like you're saying there's so
Okay.
many versions before.
Right, so many versions before, but when you come on to a project, often they don't want you to look at all the versions before, just the previous draft. And so the writer before us had written something that, had some really cool elements to it, but just for whatever reason, the studio wasn't like, let's go make this. So we kind of took a look at that and thought, how can we make this really fun? How can we make this really appeal to fans of the game? And the advantage that we had is I think we were the first writers on the project who had children in the age range who were playing the game. So we turned to our kids and said, previous writers, they had flown them out to Sweden where Mojang is headquartered, and they had like taken them through this like Minecraft university where they explained all about the game. And they didn't do that with us, probably because of the pandemic and probably because they didn't want to spend the money. But with us, we just turned to our kids and said, what's fun to you when you play this game? And we just sat and took notes. And that became the draft that got Jason Momoa attached and got a green light from Warner Brothers. But that, they didn't start shooting right away. You know, there were there was a strike going on in the industry, two strikes actually, the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild. Jason Momoa had a really busy schedule, so like he'd be all lined up to go at a certain time, and then they'd have to reschedule and move the date later on the calendar. So we finished our draft somewhere towards the end of 2021. It didn't go into production until the beginning of 2024.
Wow.
What do you think the studio did during that time?
Not sure. A lot of things.
They hired writer after writer to come in and it's like they can't just stop when, they kind of figure, well, the only thing we can be working on before production is the script. So they can't keep
Just
hiring.
revising it.
Yeah, keep hiring writers to come in and make improvements. And so the movie that gets shot, obviously I mean, we have credit on the movie. It has a lot of our DNA in it, but it isn't necessarily exactly what we came up with. And that's always the concern when something gets delayed and you're not working on it. It's like kind of, as a writer, you're like, I hope some of our stuff remains in there. But luckily enough of our stuff did that we got credit on it, and we're proud of the result.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Tyler. I'm a post-production in the post-production track. And I have a question for you. going off of that last question about the film and the writing. So because this is a big studio film, and it is also an IP based film, so like I just want to know like what is kind of some of this, so how much of it is you guys and how much is like the studio? Like, is there ideas like the studio's like you gotta have this, or and then you're like, no, you gotta have this? Is there
Yeah,
anything like that?
I think I get what you're saying. You're saying is what are the mandates from the studio as you're writing? Like, is that what you're saying? Like, what are they
Yeah,
insisting you have to include?
and yeah, and like how much of it is like when you like write a movie for like a big studio, like how much is like just you, and then how much is the studio like, yeah, we not like this, we want to do it like this. Is
Yeah,
that ever been a problem, or is that happened
I
a
think
lot?
that's the constant battle of the writer, right? Is like you come up with these ideas that you think are so cool for it, and you're enthusiastic about it. It's almost like you're like, this is the perfect version of it. And then you turn your draft in and they like it. It's even if they like it, they still have lots of notes. You're never going to avoid that process. No one's ever going to be like, it's perfect. Don't touch a word of it. Um, and so what happens is they give you a bunch of notes, and at the time when you're receiving the notes, you just nod and like, oh, that's great. Just run. Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea. Oh, yeah, it's something to think about. You know what I mean? You never want to push back and say, what are you, crazy? If we do that, you're going to ruin the whole movie. So it's once you get the notes from the studio, that's when my writing partner and I always have sort of a session where we go through the notes and we take them one at a time and we sort of figure out, okay, uh, would this help the script if we changed it to be, if we changed it according to this note? Maybe, maybe not. So we'll consider everyone, we'll give it our full consideration. But often, what you're looking for is not the exact note they give you, but the note behind the note. Now, here's what I mean by that. They're sensing that there's something that they don't like, but the solution that they've suggested is kind of off. And so we always look for the note behind the note, not what does the studio executive say needs to happen, but what what are they pointing to in the script that could be improved? What question do they have that's not being answered in its current form? And that's how we sort of deal with it. And then when we turn in a draft based, after processing their notes, we always submit a document where it says, okay, here's how we addressed your note. You know, and like if there were 20 notes, we sort of say, okay, we did this with that one, we did this with, we made this adjustment according to your uh, specifications. And then there are always a couple words like, we just couldn't figure out how to make that one work.
Yeah, yeah, I think that works because I just kind of wanted to ask because I had some buddies that talked about this movie on a thing, and they're kind of were questioning like how much of this movie was like the director and how much was the studio.
Yeah.
Because they
Yeah.
felt like there were moments that were like pure Jared Hess. No offense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're saying there were moments that were, well, of course, like the director should put his stamp all over the movie.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, yeah, I just wanted to know because that's kind of been bugging me. I'm like, just wanting to know like how that kind of works in the industry. Like, how does the control work?
Mm-hmm.
I think that answered it. Thank you so much.
Okay, good. There we go.
Hi. Yeah, I'm just Gabe. I'm a writer director, and I gotta say, I'm actually a fan of American Fork.
Oh,
I've
cool.
actually like really enjoyed that movie. It's like you could like sense how personal that is, and like that is kind of a big jump, like from a small indie film to like a big budget sort of thing. So like I was kind of like wondering like how like was it like any jarring that kind of like transition from something small like that to like a big film like that?
When I was in film school, I sort of prided myself on I'm going to be an indie filmmaker. You know, I don't want to make Hollywood movies. You know, and I had a real attitude about it. In fact, I think when I was in school, I hardly saw any studio movies. You know, but but then I got out to LA and I was like, had to make a living at this. You know, and I just I just thought like, well, I better learn how to do it the way that the people that actually pay you to write are studios. You know, there aren't a lot of like, you know, indie producers who are like, oh, I'd love for you to, you know, find the most personal story in the world to tell, and I'll pay you $1 million to write that. You know, so the difficulty was figuring out uh, how do you write on this larger scale? How do you write for a larger audience and not just something that's, you know, totally from the heart? And I think what you want to do is you want to keep it's almost like every character should have the same depth and richness that that we get in our favorite indie movies, but just the stories that you're telling are on a larger scale, you know. So, you know, we a few years ago we wrote a sci-fi disaster movie for Fox, you know, and um, if it would have been made, it probably would have been made for $150 million, you know. But we thought about, okay, but you know, this lead character, how do we make him the kind of character that, you know, you might find in an indie movie or I'm saying that the skills translate because indie movies are character based, but then you have to learn how to do the you know, the large set pieces and intricate plots that are expected in studio stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. But yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kerry Levy. I'm a writer director here at the school. But I wanted to say first off that I'm a really big fan of the original Pride and Prejudice Latter-day Comedy, and I
Awesome.
love your acting in that. You're one of my favorite characters in that movie. I grew up on that. Absolutely awesome little flick there. But the main question I had for you, it kept running through my brain that you talked earlier about how it was much easier to adapt like a linear story like The Last of Us to the screen, but that you kind of ran into some challenge with a non-story based game like Minecraft. Is there any can you tell us about any of your inspirations that you went to kind of create this story? Like that was maybe outside the game or like maybe a force you didn't expect?
I guess we thought about what's funny is what we were worried about is you know, this is it's a movie like so many where you go through a portal into a new world and we thought you know, we thought how do we make that fresh and new? So we thought of movies that do that well. Like Galaxy Quest was one for us where um I don't know if you've seen the movie, but the the characters are actors on a TV show who end up getting like beamed aboard a spaceship, and it's like they're expected to the people on the spaceship think that they're like actual, you know, the characters that they played in the show. So that was one that was important for us. I'm trying to think of other movies that we turned to for this. Um, I can't think of any off the top of my head.
I think Galaxy Quest is a great comp though, honestly.
Yeah, yeah,
Awesome. That answers my question. Thanks so much.
you bet.
Um, Hi, I'm Isaac, working on directing. But one question I kind of had, this is a very effects heavy movie, and it probably cost a pretty penny to produce. So when writing, did you have to take these things into consideration and kind of mold the story in a certain way so that it wouldn't, well, break the bank?
Totally. And not just on this, but on other things we've worked on. We pitched a project once that was a sequel to a movie that did okay, but not great. And we were pitching to the director, um, this elaborate set piece to start the movie. And he just stopped us and said, I'm sorry, that's going to cost way too much money. Let me just strike that out right now. So I guess that was one thing that we thought about was like, yeah, how much are they going to spend on this? Like, and and I guess the best thing that you can do is just look at other movies that they've in a similar budget range and try and size it to that level. So I guess Jumanji was a budget comp for us. Um, even though I think this movie had a lot more CGI in it than that did. But yeah, and then we also knew that everything in the Minecraft world was gonna be computer generated. So I think I think we just tried to take that into account, and sometimes we would turn something in and they'd say this set piece. And when I say set piece, do you guys know what I mean? Yeah. This set piece needs to be bigger, and sometimes they'd want us to dial it down a little bit. Like, oh, for example, I think we had in our draft, we had like one other major like set piece focused around, I can't remember what it was from the games, some kind of temple from the game.
Oh,
Yeah. And that ended up I think they just were like, that's one set piece too many.
mm,
You know what I'm talking about? Like a sand temple or something like that?
yeah, desert temples.
Desert temple. What's funny is we became an expert. I knew everything about Minecraft at one point, but it's sort of like studying for a test, like you you have the information in your head when you need it, and then once you don't need it anymore, you like forget everything. You know, like cramming for a test the next day after you've taken the test, you're like, I don't even remember anything about biology. I just knew it for the time that I needed to take the test. And so I used to know a lot more about Minecraft than I do right now.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you.
You bet.
Hey, Hubbel, are you cool with one more question?
Absolutely.
Okay, sorry, guys.
Hi, I'm Amelia Wilson. I'm still figuring out which track I want to do, but I was wondering when writing a script and then having an actor like Jack Black, did you have to like kind of change it because he would do improv or like would he do some improv with the script? How would that work?
I think he did do a lot of improv. I mean, someone like that, that's expected because they they'll say the lines on the page, but it's almost like part of their job is to make everything funnier. But I'll tell you an interesting bit of trivia. When we were writing the script, initially they were like, we want Jack Black to be the star of this, but the Steve character wasn't even involved at that point. So we actually wrote it for Jack Black as the Jason Momoa character.
Oh, wow.
And so our initial draft was like, you can almost picture Jack Black as this sort of like washed out gamer, right? Who owns a video game store. And so we were all excited about that. And then I think the word came, Jack's done a lot of video game movies. He doesn't want to do this one, right? But Jason Momoa is interested in playing this part. And so the task became, how do we take this Jack Black type character and fashion him into someone who could be played by Jason Momoa? So the next draft was all about that. Like, okay, how do we Momoify the Garrett?
Nice.
Yeah. And then the irony is Jack Black came back to the project, but as the Steve character, you know.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Look at us. We're able to have a great conversation and even get you back to class in time. Thank you so much for taking time.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, please.
Utah Valley University means a lot to me as a school. And I have family members who have gone there and loved their experience. And I live in Utah County, so it's close to my heart. I live in Highland. And so I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. And anytime I can be of help, just give me a call and let me know.
Absolutely. I do want to say, first of all, no one mentioned 99 Senses, even though a lot of them watched it. And it's such a beautiful film. Congratulations on that.
Thanks so much, Duane.
And I also want to say that I saw Minecraft with my 4-year-old grandson, and he squealed with delight through the whole thing. And so it meant the world to me that he just loved it so much. So thank you. And one last request.
Yeah.
For our thumbnail for our little YouTube channel, can I take a screenshot of you smiling into the camera right here?
Well, do I have good lighting or am I too shadowed?
You're pretty shadowed, but you just go other way. There you go. Perfect. Okay. Wait. There you go. There we go.
Did you get
Perfect.
it?
Thank
Did
you
I
so
lose it?
much, everyone. Big round of applause. It's still going. Have a great holiday.
You too.
Thanks
Thanks,
for
Duane.
coming and playing with us.
Absolutely. Bye.